chilling surveillance video shows a man dragging this heavy sack outside a Southern California apartment. Investigators say the body of his wife, 33-year-old Shayla Cabrera, was later found wrapped in similar material.
The neighborhood on Lancaster Boulevard was quiet that night. Street lights flickered over parked cars, and the soft hum of a distant highway was the only sound breaking the stillness. However, inside one small apartment, something terrible was unfolding. A light stayed on long after midnight. Neighbors would later recall faint noises, a thud, perhaps a muffled cry, then silence. Hours later, a figure emerged, dragging something heavy into the night. He moved quickly, methodically, as if following a plan long rehearsed. By sunrise, the apartment that once held the laughter of 3 young children stood eerily still. The curtains were drawn, the front door locked, and the woman who had fought for years to protect herself and her sons was nowhere to be found. The doorbell camera captured everything. A man dragging something heavy wrapped in fabric across the pavement at 4:00 a.m., struggling with the weight as he pulled it toward his car. Inside that bundle was his wife. What happened inside that home in the early hours of August 10th would soon unravel into one of Lancaster's most haunting cases, a story of control, fear, and the desperate final act of a man who refused to let go. When Shayla Elizabeth Cabrera arrived in the United States from Peru, she carried the same hope shared by millions of immigrants who begin a new life far from home to build a better life for her family, the hope of safety, stability, and opportunity. She wanted to give her children everything she never had. The move to the United States was not just a change of country, it was a leap of faith. She arrived with dreams, courage, and a mother's determination to build a future from the ground up. At 33 years old, she had become exactly what she hoped to be: a loving mother to 3 young sons ages 9, 6, and 4, living in Lancaster, California. Those who knew her described her as an unconditional friend, a loving mother, and a hard worker. Shayla's friends in Lancaster saw her as someone who radiated warmth despite carrying burdens that would have crushed others. She worked tirelessly to provide for her 3 boys, maintaining the kind of positive energy that drew people to her. Friends and neighbors often spoke about her warmth and generosity. She was the kind of person who remembered birthdays, brought food to others when they were struggling, and still managed to smile through her own challenges. In her small apartment on Lancaster Boulevard, she created a home filled with love for her children. She took pride in small details, preparing homemade Peruvian meals for her children, helping them with schoolwork, and decorating their modest apartment with photos, drawings, and colorful touches that made it feel like home. Despite her limited means, she created a space filled with laughter and love. But there was something Shayla kept hidden beneath that bright smile, something dark that only those closest to her knew about. Behind that sense of calm and normalcy, something darker was happening. Her husband, 36-year-old Josimar Cabrera Corno, was not the man he appeared to be to the outside world. Behind closed doors, their marriage was anything but the happy family portrait it seemed. Josimar seemed like a caring partner from the outside. He smiled in public, played the role of a father, and gave the impression of a stable family man. Yet behind closed doors, life was very different. According to Shayla's mother, Helga Rosillo, who remained in Peru, her daughter had reported Josimar for domestic violence back in their home country. Even before moving to the United States, Shayla had already filed a report in Peru accusing him of abuse. The abuse had followed them across borders and oceans. It wasn't just Shayla who suffered. Rosillo stated, "She told me that he hit her, mistreated her, and even slapped my youngest grandchild, who is just 3 years old." Those who knew about it feared for her, but Shayla kept much of her pain hidden. For years, Shayla endured physical and verbal abuse, trapped in a relationship that grew more dangerous with each passing day. Like many women in her situation, she hoped things might change once they started a new life abroad. Unfortunately, the violence didn't stop. It simply followed her to California. Her friends watched helplessly as she struggled with an impossible decision: stay and endure the violence, or leave and risk losing her children to a man who repeatedly threatened to take them away if she tried to escape. Elizabeth Russo, one of Shayla's closest friends, explained the terrible bind Shayla found herself in. Elizabeth later told investigators that Shayla felt trapped. Josimar had threatened to take the children away if she left him, a fear that kept her bound to him for years. Those threats had kept Shayla trapped for years. Even in the midst of that fear, Shayla's heart remained kind. Those threats had kept Shayla trapped for years. Even in the midst of that fear, Shayla's heart remained kind. She wanted them to grow up in peace, surrounded by love, to study, to travel, to live freely. It was that vision that kept her going even as the walls of her marriage closed in around her. The years of abuse had worn away her hope that things would somehow improve, and staying had become more dangerous than leaving. Shayla had made up her mind. The years of abuse had worn her down, and she could no longer live in fear. By early August 2025, Shayla had reached her breaking point. Friends revealed that Shayla was in an abusive relationship and had asked her husband for a divorce. This wasn't a decision she made lightly. She understood the danger that came with leaving an abusive partner, but staying had become impossible. She began to plan her escape, carefully saving money, talking quietly with friends she trusted, and preparing to file for divorce. She also planned to report Josimar to the authorities in Lancaster, determined to protect her boys once and for all. On August 9th, Shayla spoke with her parents in Peru and told them of her plans to leave Josimar and take their 3 young children with her. She called her parents and told them everything. She said she was ready to leave and would be going to the police. It was a conversation filled with both determination and fear. She knew she needed to protect herself and her sons. Fear of what might happen if he found out, and hope that she could finally start over. Shayla's mother says that the last time they spoke, her daughter told her she would be filing a report against Josimar in Lancaster. Her mother remembered that call vividly. That conversation would be the last time she would ever hear her daughter's voice. In the apartment on Lancaster Boulevard, tension filled every room. Josimar knew what was coming. His wife, the woman he had controlled through fear and violence for so long, was planning to leave him. The mask of control he had worn for years was slipping, and beneath it lay something far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. Friends later said that he seemed distant and angry in the days before Shayla disappeared. If he couldn't keep her under his control, he would make sure no one else could. In his mind, if he couldn't control her anymore, then no one would have her. Another friend tearfully recalled during a vigil, "This is really hard for me right now because we tried to get her out. The community had seen the warning signs. They had tried to help, but domestic violence cases are notoriously difficult to escape, especially when children are involved and the abuser makes credible threats." August 9th, 2025 would be the last day anyone saw Shayla Cabrera alive. In the early hours of August 10th, while her children slept nearby, something horrific unfolded inside their Lancaster apartment. Inside the small apartment on Lancaster Boulevard, 3 young boys slept peacefully in their beds, unaware that the world around them was collapsing. They didn't hear the struggle. They didn't see the violence. In another room, their father, the man who had once promised to protect them, was taking their mother's life. The walls of that apartment, once filled with laughter and bedtime stories, now held only silence and the echo of unthinkable cruelty. The exact details of the murder remain sealed in court documents, but what investigators piece together paints a picture of calculated violence. Prosecutors alleged that Josimar killed Shayla on August 10th at the Lancaster apartment, where they and their 3 children lived. The case filed by the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office included a special circumstances allegation. A knife was used in the attack. This was not a sudden argument or a moment of rage. This was deliberate. It was cold. It was calculated. This was final. 3 innocent children who would have their childhood shattered, their mother stolen from them in an act of unthinkable cruelty. By morning, the small apartment that had once been full of laughter had fallen silent. The children awoke in a world that would never be the same, and a community that had admired Shayla for her strength and kindness would soon be mourning the woman who had spent her final days fighting for freedom. After killing Shayla, Josimar Cabrera faced the task of concealing his crime. The man who had controlled his wife through fear for years now turned to controlling what would happen to her body. He carefully wrapped Shayla's body in a large piece of fabric, folding it tightly to conceal all traces. This fabric would later become key evidence, matching exactly what appeared in the surveillance footage. Every step, every choice he made revealed a chilling level of premeditation. Neighbors later recalled hearing faint sounds in the early morning hours, doors closing, something being dragged, then a car engine starting. In the quiet of the neighborhood at night, even the smallest sound carried far. Around 2:40 a.m., a neighbor named Norbeli Marara was returning home from her night shift when she witnessed something strange. The apartment complex was silent, the parking lot dimly lit, but there was a man awake and doing something outside. It was Josimar cleaning out the family car's trunk. She stopped, confused. At that hour, there was no reason for anyone to be outside cleaning a car trunk. She didn't know she was witnessing the beginning of a cover-up. But the defining moment was captured on camera evidence frozen in time that would seal Josimar's fate. A neighbor's Ring doorbell camera recorded footage that would become the centerpiece of the murder investigation. In the grainy black and white video, time-stamped at 4 a.m. on August 10th, a figure can be clearly seen struggling with a heavy wrapped bundle. There was no mistaking it. This was Shayla Cabrera's body. Minutes later, he stuffed the bundle into the car trunk, closed the lid, got in the car, and disappeared into the night. Josimar drove to Angeles National Forest, a vast wilderness area about an hour north of Lancaster, spanning over 700,000 acres of rugged canyons and steep cliffs. Josimar drove deep into the forest, navigating sharp turns and narrow roads until he found a hidden spot. The forest was absolutely silent. No headlights passed. No one witnessed what he did next. He pulled Shayla's body out and threw it down an embankment, discarding her among the brush and rocks as if she meant nothing. 2 days later, on August 12th, Shayla's worried friends reported her missing to the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. They had become desperate. Since August 9th, they had received no word from Shayla. Deputies were dispatched to the apartment complex on the 500 block of Lancaster Boulevard and to the Cabrera apartment to investigate. When police began asking questions, Josimar's stories quickly revealed contradictions. But the deeper the interrogation went, the more detectives noticed inconsistencies in his statements. Josimar gave multiple versions about his wife's whereabouts. Initially, he told police that Shayla had been detained by Immigration and Customs Enforcement. Later, when pressed further, he changed his story, claiming Shayla had left him for another man. In a third version, he said she had been in an accident but refused to provide any details, no witnesses, no report, no specific location. Each account contradicted the previous one, raising major suspicions among investigators and Shayla's family. Why would a concerned husband have three completely different stories? These contradictions were too obvious to ignore. Detectives quickly realized they weren't dealing with a worried husband searching for his wife, but rather someone trying to conceal a crime. When Shayla's friends came forward with information, the picture gradually became clear. They told of the years Shayla endured abuse, her divorce plans, Josimar's constant threats that he would kidnap the children if she dared to leave him. Combined with the contradictory statements and the revealed history of violence, investigators understood this was no ordinary missing person case. They were investigating a disguised murder. Detectives began reviewing every possible lead, phone call records, traffic cameras, and especially security systems around the Lancaster apartment complex. Just 3 days after Shayla disappeared on August 13th, a crucial breakthrough emerged. A neighbor's Ring doorbell camera had captured footage from the early morning of August 10th. The video showed Josimar dragging a large, carefully wrapped object across the ground, leaving the apartment complex. That short video completely changed the nature of the case. From a missing person report, it immediately became a homicide investigation. The Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department Homicide Bureau immediately took over the case. They mobilized mountain search and rescue teams from Crescenta Valley, Altadena, and Montrose to comb through Angeles Forest, an area spanning over 700,000 acres with treacherous mountainous terrain, steep canyons, and dense brush. Finding a body in such a vast area was almost like finding a needle in a haystack, but they had to try. Simultaneously, detectives coordinated with the Mexican and Peruvian consulates to issue international alerts for Josimar Cabrera. They discovered another alarming detail. Josimar and the 3 young children had also disappeared. Investigators believed he had fled the United States, taking the children with him to Peru. Saturday morning, August 16th, just after 10 a.m., the call every investigator both hopes for and dreads arrived. The Montrose search team reported discovering a suspicious object on a steep embankment in the remote forest, a fabric bundle that looked very similar to what appeared in the surveillance video. Their worst fear was confirmed. Among the rocks and brush, wrapped in the same type of fabric, was the body of 33-year-old Shayla Cabrera. For those who loved Shayla, this confirmation was devastating. News of Shayla's death spread quickly throughout the Lancaster community, especially within the Peruvian community. Candlelight vigils were organized immediately. People brought flowers, photos, and handwritten messages to remember the woman who came to America with dreams of finding a safe and better life for her children, only to meet a tragic end at the hands of the man she trusted most. That same day, the only good news was that Shayla's 3 children had been found safe in Peru and placed in protective custody. At least the boys were alive, though their mother was gone and their father was now a wanted fugitive. That evening, dozens of people gathered outside Lancaster City Hall. They held candles and signs reading "Justice for Shayla" and "Not one more." In the flickering candlelight of the California evening, the community stood together in grief, remembering the mother, friend, and neighbor who had given so much. Meanwhile, Josimar Cabrera was thousands of miles away, hiding in Peru and trying to evade justice. But investigators were closing in. Technology, persistence, and international cooperation would soon bring him before the law. After fleeing the United States, Josimar crossed the Mexican border and continued to Peru, all by land. Lieutenant Michael Medica confirmed to the New York Times that Josimar had been detained twice, once in Mexico and once in Peru. However, since there were no formal charges from the United States at that time, foreign authorities had no legal basis to hold him. Despite being questioned, he was released each time. This was a frustrating delay for investigators who were certain of his guilt. When Josimar arrived at Jorge Chavez International Airport in Lima, Peruvian police were waiting. He was stopped, questioned, and the 3 children were taken into protective custody. But without a formal extradition order, Peruvian police couldn't detain him. The suspected wife killer was free to walk while his children were handed over to child welfare officials. The case quickly gained attention in both the United States and Peru. Shayla's story spread across social media and news outlets, with many outraged that the killer could walk free while the victim's family suffered. The Peruvian Foreign Ministry coordinated with US consular officials to quickly intervene to ensure the 3 boys' safety. Within days, they were flown from Lima through Mexico City to Los Angeles to reunite with their maternal grandmother, Helga Rosillo. It was a heartbreaking reunion. The grandchildren were safe, but her daughter was gone forever. Meanwhile, prosecutors in Los Angeles County worked tirelessly. Detectives from the Homicide Bureau compiled hundreds of pages of evidence, surveillance video, witness statements, forensic results from the apartment, and Shayla's history of domestic violence reports. On Thursday, August 21st, the case file was presented to the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office. Shayla Cabrera Corno was formally charged with murder with the aggravating circumstance of using a knife as a weapon. The following morning, an extradition arrest warrant was issued and Interpol was officially notified. A red notice, an international wanted alert, was distributed globally, identifying Shayla as a fugitive charged with murder. If convicted, he faces a sentence of 26 years to life in prison. The case became a top priority for both the US Department of Justice and Peruvian National Police. A large-scale manhunt was deployed. Agents tracked movements along the Pan American Highway, checked hotels and transportation hubs, and coordinated closely with Interpol offices in Mexico and the United States. But with the red notice active, every move he made was risky. His face appeared across international databases, border alerts, and media coverage in both countries. The mounting pressure left him with no way out. On August 27, 2025, Shayla turned himself in at Interpol headquarters in Lima, Peru. Peruvian National Police announced the surrender with video showing him handcuffed, wearing a shirt with the Interpol insignia, flanked by officers. According to Peruvian officials, he will remain detained in Lima while awaiting the extradition process. This procedure could take several months, involving diplomatic coordination and court hearings to ensure compliance with international law. Once approved, he will be transferred to California to stand trial for the murder of Shayla Cabrera. For Shayla's family, the long wait for justice continues, but after months of fear, searching and suffering, there is finally hope that the man who destroyed her life will pay the price. Justice for Shayla Elizabeth Cabrera has begun its long journey home, a journey fueled by the love of a mother who came to America seeking peace, and by a community determined not to let her story be forgotten. Comment below the video. If this story was helpful, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and share with those who need to know.